Tesla had put together a compensation package for Elon Musk that was struck down by a judge now twice, despite shareholders voting twice in favor of that deal. Well, the board has approved a new deal, a bit of a what they're describing as a make-good deal. They've approved a plan to pay him 96 million shares temporarily as this case and their appeal continues. Now, 96 million shares is the equivalent of about $30 billion. This would be a $30 billion make-good. It represents about 3% of the entire company's shares. As part of the original transaction or compensation deal that was agreed upon back in 2018, he would have received, given the milestones that he surpassed, the equivalent of close to $90 billion or 9% of the company. And you'll recall that we talked about how at the time the package seemed almost impossible to achieve. He did achieve it. The shareholders voted on it twice, but a judge has disagreed with that. This plan would be, quote unquote, prospective rather than retrospective. You're not effectively allowed to pay for previous work. As part of this deal, he would be paid and those shares would vest over a 2-year term. As part of that, he would not be allowed to sell the shares, however, for another 5 years. So even though he'd be paid those shares today, he can't sell those shares for the next 5 years. He can pledge those shares so that he can effectively take out loans to pay for the taxes on the vesting of those shares. So it actually mirrors very similarly the way the original 2018 plan was set up. And if you remember, he has not been paid $1 since the 2017 plan effectively ended. I remember talking to both of you that morning in Davos when I ultimately broke that story, that to me this was the most shareholder-friendly plan that exists. You either get paid or you don't, and it's a true pay for performance. They are saying, though, this is just a down payment, and if in fact the court were to approve the appeal, meaning if they were to win on appeal on the original deal, which is still in flux, this deal would go away. So effectively, there would not be a double dip in terms of how the transaction would take place. And I would also just point you to a sentence that I do think is interesting, because clearly they're starting to think not just about paying him a third, which is this $30 billion deal, but they're trying to think about what the future holds in terms of what comes next. And there's an allusion to the fact that they are reading everybody's tweets and X's. These are shareholder tweets and X's, and how they're thinking about all of these things, and also what they say is important to Elon in terms of trying to focus his energies. I think there's going to be a lot of people reading that sentence saying, well, what is it that they can do to align? They're saying that they want to keep Elon focused, and it's a first step towards achieving that goal. You might say, well, what's the next step? And they say that they are working on next steps to address that issue. There's been a lot of speculation. We've talked about it on the air before about whether potentially a Tesla could make an investment, for an example, in an XAI as another way to potentially, focus his energies. He's talked a lot about AI being the future both of Tesla, but of course he owns XAI. XAI now is actually a service that lives to some degree inside of Tesla, because they have some of those features now available on the cars. It wouldn't surprise me if that's what that sentence ultimately means. We're going to see how all this plays out in November. Of course, there's a sentence towards the end about trying to refocus his energies and what they're going to do to work to address the sort of next steps of all of this, and so what the next steps could ultimately be. That's all for now. We're going to have to read through the rest of this, but it's fascinating. $30 billion. By the way, it would have been a lot cheaper to allow the original plan from an accounting perspective to take place. I know money's fungible, but if you think about how it was accounted for back in 2018 and how you now have to account for it today, meaning it would actually cost you $30 billion if you did it.
We waited for the first $1 trillion company. I'm still waiting for the first $1 trillion individual, and people are saying it could come as easily as 2027. could as early as 2027. We know who it would be, most likely. Probably not going to be anyone here at this table. But this, I guess, this factors into that possibility.
Well, this is only $30 billion.
I know.
It takes a long time to get to.
I know, but if he gets that, and then the stock obviously has to do well.
He's got to pay $23.34 a share for it.
Right.
It's not given away for free. That was the price that it was under the original.
I don't know how they
exercise price in 2000.
But even before this news, they said it could be by 2027. There'd have to be some outsized gains in a lot of his companies, I would think. Then you'd have $1,000 billion.